Now, the home buying process basically starts with you making the decision, I'd like to own a home. So for many of you just coming out here tonight, you're making that first little baby step towards home ownership. In fact, it's a great way to get started. We've helped literally hundreds and hundreds of workshop graduates over the years, and almost without exception, they found the process less stressful because now they know the pathway and the way they should go from today to the day that they get their keys. The next step is to find a buyer agent to represent them. And we're going to talk about that in detail in just a moment. And the next two steps really should happen simultaneously. That you have a one-on-one consultation with your lender and a one-on-one consultation with your buyer before you go out and start looking at homes. So let's talk about buyer agency. So buyer agency got its beginnings in the United States in the late 80s. And a consumer advocate down there did a poll of buyers. And he asked them the question, who do you think is representing you in this transaction? Well, it turned out that 72% of the people responded by saying that they thought the agent who was showing them homes, they thought that agent was working for them. Unfortunately, at that time, under the then current laws of agency, that was 100% wrong. At that time, both the listing agent, that's the person who has that sign in the lawn, and the agent who was out here showing homes to the buyer were both working for the seller. So there was obviously a major misconception here in the marketplace. So we got buyer agency in Ontario here January the 1st of 1995, by the way. So when this came along, we got the same sort of paperwork as the Americans did, whereby and a disclosure form whereby you're sitting down with an agent and who you think, of course, is going to represent you, and they say, well, you know what, I need you to sign this document stating that you understand that I'm working for the seller, not you. How does that make you feel? Of course, it doesn't make you feel very good, right? Natural question everybody had was, well, who's representing me, the buyer, in this transaction? The answer was, nobody was. No one was representing the buyer's interests whatsoever. So the Americans saw a niche market opportunity here, and they created something called buyer agency, whereby the buyer could have their own representation. We also got that here January the 1st of 1995, so 15 years ago, right? So like everything in life, when there's change, there's resistance. And the resistance in this case came mainly from the seller because of the way commission had traditionally been paid. Now, the traditional way was that the seller would pay the listing agent, let's say it was 5% of the sale price, and the listing agent would split that 50-50 between themselves and the sub-agent to the seller, that agent who was showing homes to the buyer, but really by law working for the seller. Seller was okay with all of that because everybody's working for him. However, when buyer agency came along, the sellers were saying, you know what, if they want to have their own representation, let them pay. But you can appreciate if you're a first-time buyer coming in with your 5% down and you're scraping your pocket for closing costs, you're not going to have another $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000 to pay an agent. It's just not going to happen. So the sellers rapidly realized that in order to get their home sold, they were going to have to compromise on this issue. So within about 6 months or so, it gravitated back to the old method whereby the seller would pay the listing agent, but now the listing agent splitting it 50-50 between themselves and the buyer agent. Okay, so we've solved that part of the equation. The other change that came about with the advent of buyer agency was the change from disclosure to confidentiality. And this is the part that we really embraced wholeheartedly because we work with many, many buyers. So under the old situation, let's say you walked into a house and you just couldn't help yourself. You say, you know what, I love this place. I would pay full price for this. Well, because in the old style where that agent was working for the seller, they were bound and obligated to tell the seller everything you said. Okay? So obviously there's no confidentiality there at all, and you've lost your negotiating position completely, right? Well, now if you've signed a buyer contract with an agent to represent you exclusively, now there's confidentiality. So anything that you say to that agent must remain confidential. In fact, it's the buyer agent's responsibility to learn as much as possible about that seller and use it against them in the offer negotiations. So the tables have turned 180 degrees on this. So I'll give an example of a story that happened with Sally and I. Sally was out on a Friday evening. She showed this lady several homes. Saturday morning, the lady called up and said, well, I saw this one we saw last night over in the Papin-Girard area. I really, really like, let's put an offer in. So we called up the listing agent, and he said, well, unfortunately for you, there's another offer already registered, and we're presenting it at 2 o'clock today. So that meant we were going into what's called a multiple offer situation. And that's pretty predominant in this marketplace as well. There's lots of multiple offers going on. So we called up the listing agent, and he said, well, presenting at 2 o'clock. We called our buyer back, told her the situation. And she said, well, you know what? I would pay more than list price if I had to for this home. I really love it. It's perfect for me. So we decided to do 3 offers. Now, the list price was $369,900. We did one offer at $360,000, a second offer at $368,200, just below list, and a third offer at $371,600, just above list, the maximum she could afford to go to. So why did we do the $360,000 offer? Well, in case that other offer didn't show up. Okay? Because several times every year I'm on my way to an offer and expecting it to be multiple. I'll get a call from the listing agent. Well, the other agent called and said his buyer wants to wait and see what happens with your offer before they proceed, so you're on your own. Well, in that case, I want to have a low offer I'm going to present on our buyer's behalf. So I got there at 2 o'clock, and our buyer was outside with her mother for some moral support and some hugs. We're chatting away. Listing agent comes out in the porch and says, well, you want to come in and present your offer? I said, well, where's the other guy? Oh, he called and said he's going to be late. Come on in. I said, no. I'll wait until he shows up. Because I've been fooled like that once before, right? Where he never showed up, right? So 20 after 2, the other agent pulls in his Jeep. He runs inside, presents his offer. Literally 15, 20 minutes later, he's back out, jumping in his Jeep, and he's starting to pull away. Well, that's not normal. Normally, the buyer agent sticks around to represent his buyer's best interest throughout the entire transaction. Well, I happen to know this guy, so I said, well, where are you going to? Oh, I've got another offer to present. See you later. He drives off, right? Well, while he was in there, my buyer said to me, well, I guess we're going to have to present our highest offer, aren't we? And I said, well, that's probably the case. Anybody here like to go to Las Vegas? Casino Rama? Niagara Falls? Too afraid to admit it? Anyway, going into a multiple offer situation is like throwing the dice, right? You have no clue what those other offers are. Often wished I had X-ray vision. You know, I could scope out the briefcase, figure out what the offer is, we'd bid $100 more and be eminently successful all the time, right? Obviously, that's not reality. So in a multiple offer situation, most importantly, you want to pay attention to your CMA. Remember that comparative market analysis that we determined what the value was, right? Because you don't, in the heat and the excitement of the moment, want to end up overpaying for that particular home. So, I'm going up the steps to the house. I've got my briefcase in hand. I've got 3 different colored file folders with each offer so I don't get them confused. I'm thinking, well, the other agent did show up, so 360 is probably out, but why don't I present the 368 too? Worst case is the listing agent will say, well, I'm sorry, the other offer is a little better. And I'll say, well, I have my buyer's authorization to present this one. Pull out the 371.6. I figured I could do it and get away with it because the other agent's gone. Now, if he was sitting outside patiently in his car, I wouldn't want to risk it, because if I tried that, the listing agent might say, well, if I let you come back, I should let him go back to his buyer as well, and I wouldn't want to risk that. I figured this time, no problem, right? So that's what I did, presented the 368 too. Interesting thing was that the listing agent and the seller were speaking one of the 80 languages in Toronto I haven't mastered yet. They were chatting back and forth, and finally he turns to me and in English says, will your buyer pay any more? And well, I go to Las Vegas, but only for seminars. I don't gamble, right? I go lots of seminars there, but I can certainly bluff with the best of them. So I said no. Figured I could always reach in the briefcase, pull the other offer out, right? Interestingly enough, he turns to his client and says, in English, I told you, in a multiple offer situation, they always come in with their best price. I recommend we take this one. Yes. So our client was very happy, very excited. She saved a few $1,000s in the transaction. And that's what you want your buyer agent to be doing for you. Looking for those opportunities, those ways of negotiating strongly on your behalf. Now, how do you choose the right buyer agent? Well, one of the criteria would be experience and knowledge in the business. Obviously, that's very important. But there's a couple of other things that you might want to ask as well. Number one is, you might want to ask the agent, could you tell me what percentage of your business is repeat or referral business? And if they came back and said 40, 50, 60% is repeat or referral, that's a pretty good indication of how well they're treating their clients. Because certainly people wouldn't be willing to refer their friends and family unless they were very, very happy with how smoothly the process went the first time. Nor would they be willing to come back and do business with that agent again unless they were happy with the price they paid that first time around, right? Another question you might want to ask is, could you give me the names of 2 buyers who you've helped recently who I could call and ask how they felt they were treated in the transaction? Now, all of us in the real estate industry get testimonial letters from our clients. We've got a nice thick binder of them in our office. We absolutely love to receive them. But sometimes when people are reading them, they get a little skeptical. They say, you know what, their mother wrote that letter. Way too good to be true, right? Well, by you being able to talk to someone on the phone, listen to the tonality in their voice and the sincerity of their words, that's a pretty good indication of how well that person was treated. So now you've decided on the buyer agent that you're going to work with. Now you're going to be asked to sign a buyer contract, authorizing that agent to represent you. So typically it starts off with the agent sending you listings from a variety of price ranges and neighborhoods to get you educated about the market. And then when it's time for you to really start seriously looking, they'll meet with you face to face and have that buyer consultation. That's very important. They'll determine and be able to narrow down your search in both price and in location and neighborhoods. They'll start sending you listings and start showing you listings, actually. And because they're your buyer agent, they're showing you the good things, but they're also showing you the bad things of each of those listings, because they want you to make a very informed, knowledgeable decision. Then when the time comes that you find the home that you really like, of course they're going to go back and do that CMA. They're going to go back to the computer, pull off all the comparable sales. They'll negotiate the offer on your behalf. They'll help you satisfy any conditions you might have in the offer. And then they'll be able to advise and counsel you until the day that you get your keys, and typically for many months and years beyond. Now, a buyer contract can be for any length of time you determine. It could be for 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, the maximum being 6 months, with the average being 60 to 90 days. However, before you sign any buyer contract, you want to ask 2 important questions. Question 1. What if I'm not happy with your service? Can I cancel this contract? If they say no, you want to be out that door right away. Now, if they treat that question very casually and say, oh yeah, sure, no problem, sign here, say, wait. Could you please put that in writing for me? Because several times every year we get calls from people saying, you know what, we're not happy with our agent, we're not getting the service we want, we'd like to work with you. Terrific. Have you signed a contract? Oh yeah, but he's told us he'd let us out of it. Okay, well, have them sign the Toronto Real Estate Board buyer contract cancellation form, and we're very happy to help you. Unfortunately, almost invariably, they'll call back in a day or two and say, you know what, he denies telling us he was going to let us out of it. He's going to be vindictive and force us to wait the 30, 60 days, whatever's left, before we can start working with you. So very, very important, get it in writing. And what we provide is what we call our Easy Exit Buyer Guarantee. Basically says if you're not happy with our service for any reason whatsoever, we'll cancel that contract, because it's not our philosophy to hold back anyone who's not happy with our service for any reason whatsoever. Now, what does the cost to have a buyer agent represent you? Well, as you learned earlier, absolutely zero. So you've got the best of both worlds. You've got someone else, the seller is paying the commission in its entirety, and the buyer agent is representing your interests throughout the entire transaction. Now, what should you do when you see a sign in the lawn or perhaps an ad in the Toronto Star or the Resale Homes magazine? Well, this should be one of the services that your buyer agent provides to you. So let's say you're driving by the corner of Adelaide and Shaw on your way home from work, and you see a for sale sign that wasn't there in the morning when you were passing by. Well, you're interested, you're curious, right? So pull over, write down the address, write down the phone number on the sign, call your buyer agent, say, could you please look up this listing for me? I'm curious what it's priced at. So they come back to you and give you the details on the property, and it's listed at $399. Well, problem is your price point's $350 to $360, so it's out of your price range. So no harm done. Now you're a bit more educated about what values are in that particular area. And away you go. Similarly with a resale homes ad. Now in the resale homes, oftentimes you do see the price, you see the description or you read the description, it sounds fantastic, and you see the picture, a picture looks good, but what don't you know? You don't know where it is, right? So again, you call your buyer agent. Can you please look up this listing? It's on page 42, second one down the left, and let me know what the address is. So your buyer agent will get back to you and give you the address. It might be over in Bloor and Lansdowne, and that's not a neighborhood that you were considering. So again, no problem. Now you're a bit more educated and perhaps a little more skeptical about ads in the Resale Homes magazine, right? Now, what happens if you go into an open house or make an appointment to see the home with the listing agent directly? So these are two totally different scenarios. So let's say you've already been in for a consultation with us. We're going to give you one of these home buyer passports to take away with you. And it contains some great information about home buying, plus places to track the homes that you're actually seeing. We suggest you carry this in your pocket, your purse, your glove compartment. If you're out on a Saturday or Sunday and you see an open house sign, feel free to go in. Because first of all, open houses are a great way to learn about different floor plans that are available throughout the city. Maybe pick up some, and learn about pricing as well, right? Pick up some decorating tips, maybe that you can use in your new place. But as you're walking up the steps to the house, flash this in front of you, right? Say, stay away, I've got my buyer agent. And instead of them pouncing on you when you walk in the door and asking you for your great-grandmother's email address and your mother's date of birth and your second-born child, they'll welcome you in and say, come on in, take a look around. I understand you have your own representation. That's terrific. If you're interested, call your buyer agent. We're happy to put the transaction together. So open houses are A-OK. However, let's say you called your buyer agent 22 times that week and you're sort of embarrassed about that, which you shouldn't be, right? It's part of the process. And you say, oh, what the hang, I'll just call the listing agent. So you get on the phone. And for those of you who've called on ads, you might have found that sometimes it's difficult to get information about the property until you reveal a lot of information about yourself. You finally do find out it's listed at $399, but the listing agent has found out that your price range ideally is $350 to $360. You've described to him what you're looking for. This home does sound perfect. And they're very persuasive. And they say, you know what, I'm going to be in the neighborhood tomorrow night at 7 o'clock anyway on your way home from work. Why don't you drop by and take a look? So you say, oh, sure, why not? So you hang up the phone, immediately pick up the phone, you call Mom or Dad. Mom or Dad, I've talked to this agent about this home. It sounds fantastic, perfect for us, but unfortunately it's about $30,000 more than our budget. Now, Mom or Dad, being the perfect parents that they are, will say, son or daughter, if you need the extra cash, I'll give it to you. I'm painting the perfect, if unrealistic, picture here, right? Okay, so next night you go there at 7 o'clock, you walk out at 7:30, very excited about this home. It is perfect for you. Well, because you've been introduced to the property by the listing agent, you may have lost the right to have your own representation. And there's some very, very important reasons why you do not want to use the listing agent. Now, when all agents become members of the Ontario Real Estate Association, we agree to abide by the ethics rules of that institution. One of the ethics rules deals with this. It says that the listing agent can only prepare the comparative market analysis. Remember that CMA that's so important in determining value? They'll only do it for a buyer customer upon request. Okay? Because you're not a client, because the client is already the seller. You're only a customer, right? It continues by saying, if you, the listing agent, do prepare that CMA, you cannot use it to provide advice to assist the buyers in the price negotiations. Why not? Well, to do so might give the buyers a negotiating edge and violate the listing agent's duty to put the interests of the seller first. And it finally concludes by saying, remember, if you're the listing agent or sub-agent to the seller here, both working for the seller, your principal fiduciary duty is to the seller, even if you're working with the buyers as customers. So it's very clear that the rules show that the listing agent's first loyalty is to the seller, not the buyer. Right? A couple of stories around this. This lady called me about a year ago in the fall and said, you know what, I bought this very small one-bedroom co-ownership apartment in the northwest part of the city in the springtime. And it's way too small for me, and because I've just become engaged, I've never even moved into it, I want to sell it. So I looked it up, and it was a very small little place in a not so good building, and I noticed that she had paid $61,000 for it. Now, I looked up the values, and the values, spring and fall, hadn't moved, and it was worth only about $51,000. So she'd paid almost 20% more than what she should have. So I called her back and I said, well, how did you happen to buy this place? And she said, well, I saw an ad and I called on the ad and I used the listing agent to buy it. And I said, oh, well, did you also realize that the listing agent was the owner of the property? So not only was he the listing agent representing the seller, he was the seller. So is he going to give her independent advice? Absolutely not, right? Another story happened. We were doing one of our Saturday morning workshops at the Yonge and St. Clair location. And at the end of the break, this couple came up to us and said, you know what, we've seen this home on the internet. We've seen the color photos. We've seen the virtual tour. It is absolutely perfect for us. In fact, we're so excited, we've already called the listing agent. We've set up a time to see it at 2 o'clock this afternoon. And we've been pretty smart about it. We've asked how much the list price is, and she's told us $339,900. And we've asked how much flexibility the seller has, and she said, well, there's another home that's sold nearby for $338,000, and that's the seller's bottom line. That's what they want. And you know what? We're happy to pay it, because it does sound perfect for us. But we also realized that after listening to you this morning, we realized that we really should have our own representation. We said, of course, that's true. What do you want to do? Well, could you help us? We, of course, said yes. So we canceled that 2 o'clock showing. We set up another time to show them through. And we ended up presenting that offer on Sunday night and helping them get it for $320,000. So $18,000 less than what was the seller's bottom line the night before, or the day before, and $18,000 less than what they were willing to pay 24 hours before. So what happened? Well, when we did our CMA, I couldn't justify anything higher than $315,000 to $320,000. So I thought, you know what, maybe I'm missing something here. So I called up the listing agent. I said, you know what, you've told these folks about a home that's sold nearby for $338,000. I can't find it. Where is it? I thought maybe she was fooling around a bit, right? Well, she gave me an address of this property. I looked it up. Turned out it was a 3-bedroom detached home on a very quiet street backing onto a ravine. Problem was, the property we were looking at was a 2-bedroom bungalow on Broadview Avenue. Is Broadview a very quiet street? No. Right? So it's like apples and oranges. So we were able to convince the seller with our CMA that $320,000 was the right price to pay. And by the way, when this listing agent realized that she was losing these people, she realized they were serious and she was losing them as buyers, she sort of panicked a little bit and called them up and said, you know what, if you use me to buy the place, I'll reduce my commission by 1% and save you about $3,500. Well, fortunately for them, they lost faith in her by that time, because $3,500 versus $18,000 is still apples and oranges, right? So very, very important, have your own agent in the transaction. Now, anybody asking themselves this question? What really is the buyer agent's motivation to get you the lowest price? Everybody should be asking this question, right? Very, very important, right? Well, our goal in our team is to build clients for life. Sally and I have been doing training with a real estate university out of San Diego, California since 1993 called By Referral Only University. And they teach realtors and lenders from all across North America how to build their business by referral. Sally and I, of course, have taken many trainings with By Referral Only. John, where did you take your training?
Beautiful San Francisco.
Beautiful, cold, chilly San Francisco, right? With fog everywhere, right? But anyway, it's great. In fact, the owner of By Referral Only was just in Toronto a few days ago, and he gave us a good seminar and so on. So our goal is to wow you in that transaction. We want you to be so excited with the price you paid, so happy with how smoothly the process went, that you're going to be very keen to refer your friends and family to us. Because really, when you get down to the dollars and cents of it, it's very insignificant to us, but it can often be very significant to you. So let me explain. So for every $1,000 of purchase price at 2.5% to the buyer agent, that's $25, right? Now, Revenue Canada and RE/MAX take their share, so we're down to about $15 per thousand. So if we're able to negotiate even $5,000 off the price for you, you know how long it takes you to save $5,000, right? That's a significant amount of money. well, we're going to lose 5 times 15 or $75. So it's really nickels and dimes to us, but it's often very, very significant to you. So it really all boils down to trust. You want to be able to trust that your buyer agent is working solidly on your behalf throughout that entire transaction.